Makers, welcome back to the shed. My name is Chris, and in this video I would like to show you one last thing. I want to show you how to use switches in the analog world to control digital outputs on a computer. Let's take a closer look. Now, when I press this tactile switch, nothing happens in the real world. That's because we've got some computer code that's making things happen on the screen. When I press the button, Scratchy the cat looks like he's running. Wahey! Now, in order to do some super awesome coding on our Raspberry Pi, we really need to understand how switches work. That reminds me! Okay, makers, every day I get to sit on my couch and interact with technology. We've got TVs, PlayStations, Xboxes, Skyboxes, DVD players, all really cool. But every time I want to interact with these machines, I need one of these, a remote control. Now, in our previous videos we spoke about switches, and in fact on these remote controls there are loads and loads of switches that make technology do different things. But every time I sit down there's one really important button, and that is the power button. And the power button can switch things on or off. And in our previous videos we've talked about how switches can either be on or off. But computers and electronic devices don't use the words on and off. They use ones and zeros. One is on and zero is off. And in fact, if we take a really close look at the power button, we can see that the symbol for a power button is a combination of 1 and 0. Now, you might never have looked at that before, but now you know that that's what a power button does. Okay, let's go back to the shed. Right, makers, when we're using a switch in a computer program, we're actually creating a branching program. We're going to give the computer two sequences to run through. If the switch is down, do these instructions, else do something else. It's called selection or a branching program. Now, in order to make this project, you're going to need our Raspberry Pi and breadboard combo, 3 male to female jumper wires, 1 male to male jumper wire, a tactile switch, and a teeny tiny resistor. Now you've got all the bits out of the box, let's put it together and make a circuit. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my male to female jumper wires, and I'm going to put the female end over the 5 volts, and I'm going to put the male end into my power distribution bus. So the electrons are flowing down the 5 volts and into this strip. And I'm then going to take my male to male jumper wire, and I'm going to put it in the distribution bus, and I'm going to put it in C2. Just like that. So now the electrons are flowing from the distribution bus into this row. I'm then going to take my switch and I'm going to bridge it across the trench so that the electrons can flow when I press it. And I'm then going to do something a bit different this time. I am going to take one of my male to female jumper wires, and I'm going to take it from the bottom leg of the switch, and I'm going to pin it over pin number 21, so that when the electrons flow through the circuit, some of them will go down to pin 21, and that will give us an input. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my resistor, and I'm going to take it from this bottom leg over to the ground rail. Just like that. And I'm going to complete my circuit by going from the ground rail over to the ground pin on my Raspberry Pi. So the electrons are currently stuck here. When I press the switch, they will flow into 21, and we've got a circuit. Now, if our circuit is built correctly, we can use this analog input to control digital programs on the computer. That would be pretty cool. Okay guys, remember that computers are stupid and we have to tell them to do everything, okay? So we're going to do some similar stuff to what we were doing last time. We're going to go when green flag is clicked, and then we're going to bring in a broadcast, and in this broadcast we're going to say GPIO server on. Now what this does is it tells the Raspberry Pi that we're going to use the GPIO pins. What we then need to do is we need to configure our pin as an input. And remember that we plugged into pin 21, so we're going to go config 21 in. Alright, now what we're going to do next might seem a bit daft, but we're going to do it anyway, because what we need to do is just to click the green flag. Now when we click the green flag, we configure the input tile. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop it, and we're going to go into the sensing tiles, and down here there's a tile that says slider sensor value. Now when I click on it now, you can see that I've got GPIO 21. Okay, so there it says GPIO 21 sensor value. Just next to it I've got a little tick box, so I'm going to tick that, and you'll notice that up here on the screen I've now got the sensor value of 0. If I press my switch, it changes to 1. 0, 1. Off, on. We can do stuff with that, makers. So makers, a switch has two states, on and off, 1 and 0. And in order to use this in a program, we're using branching programs. If the value is 1, do this stuff, else do something different. We need to use an if-else tile. Let's do this! Okay guys, we're going to use an if-else statement. We're going to go back to our control tiles, but before we do that, we want the following program to happen forever. Now just down here, we've got an if-else tile. Now remembering that I said we were going to have two ways through the program. One of the ways is going to go underneath if, and the other way is going to go with the else. But before we do any of that, we've got to make the computer measure the value. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to operators, and we're going to bring in an equals. And we need to measure the input on GPIO 21. So if GPIO 21 sensor value equals 1, what we want to happen is to switch to Scratchy's costume 2. If we look up here, we can see that Scratchy the cat actually has two costumes. There's costume 2, and here is costume 1. If I go back in here, if it's not pressed, so if the value of the switch is 0, Scratchy the cat is going to go to costume 1. So if we press the button, he's going to be costume 2, and if we don't press the button, he's going to be costume 1. Check out what happens when I press the green flag. The program is running, and now every time I press the switch, Scratchy the cat's costume changes. And it looks like he's running. Running, running, and running, running, and running, running. But he's not really running, he's just pixels on a screen. Controlling a cat, you say? With a switch, you say? And yet you know a switch doesn't have to be a switch. It could be anything made of metal. We can take a peg and some aluminum foil and create a custom switch. It's a dragon. And here's another switch. We've got some cardboard and aluminum foil. If we cover these bits of cardboard with the aluminum foil, stack them together and glue them, we get this. What is it? This is a pressure pad. The exact same type of thing that we see in loads and loads of security systems around the world. When these two pads are pressed together, it sends an electrical impulse back to the Pi, and we've got a switch. So makers, just as we've done in previous videos, we're going to replace this switch with this switch. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this switch out of our circuit, and we're going to replace it with some wires. Now all I've done here is I've daisy chained two male to female wires together with a male to male jumper wire, and I'm going to put that into there. And then I'm going to take this end and I'm going to sellotape it to the top of my pressure pad. Yeah, then I'm going to turn the pressure pad over because actually I want to put another one on this side. So the exact same thing, I've got two male to female jumper wires and a male to male jumper wire. We've now made contact with the metal and I'm going to put this in the board where the other leg of my switch was. And now, should anything press down on the pressure pad, we get a circuit back to our Raspberry Pi. Thanks for joining me in the Shed Makers. I hope you've had fun. This video has been all about how to use switches to control digital things on your computer. We've looked at how switches work, how power switches have ones and zeros in them, and how switches are all about being on and off and 1 and 0, and how we can use those ones and zeros in computer programs to create branching programs using selection. We've also looked at how we can create our own switches using bits of metal, and I want you guys to try and make your own stuff by creating your own circuits and your own programs. Remember, that's what this is all about. We want you to get out there and make stuff. So until the next time you head to the shed, get out there and make stuff.